Welcome to the podcast, Kori. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today.
I'm so excited to be here. This is an honor. Thank you for having me on.
So, why don't you just tell everyone just like a little bit about yourself and what you currently do?
Yeah, my name is Kori. I live in Hawaii with my husband and my two kids. We moved here about 2 years ago, just kind of in pursuit of a more simple life and just kind of be surrounded with people that are kind of in the same mindset. And yeah, so whenever I moved here, I was looking to kind of move away from one-on-one coaching, and I started to develop an online course. And my course is on metabolism, but just an idea of, how I even got into that was just through my own health journey of reversing chronic disease and kind of just honestly my mind being exploded at the concept of there being this way where you can kind of like set the foundation of your body for your body to like fall into balance basically, and thrive. And so essentially I'm just very passionate about educating on metabolism and how to kind of move away from a lot of what is culturally normal, what might have been accepted for a long time, among, if you're kind of in the working world and maybe you're in like the hustle culture of go, go, go and not really resting, or, a lot of my audience are moms and wives, and just the concept of like, hey, like life does not have to be stressful. It doesn't feel like it doesn't have to be something that depletes you. You can pour into yourself and then show up as your most, vital and resilient self. And so, yeah, my passion is really just women's health, and just, um, you know, being in a place where I can hopefully educate and inspire that you can be vital and vibrant and resilient, and just really enjoy nourishment and really enjoy food, and it not have control over you, but that it can just really empower you. So that is, yeah, that's me. I mean, and I just love this so much. I love getting to connect with people like you who are equally as passionate about this way of eating and living, and just life.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know that you had only been in Hawaii for 2 years. So, before I know that you were on the mainland, you were in Texas.
I was actually in Florida.
Oh,
I was born and raised in Texas,
yeah.
and then so you're exactly right. And then I moved to Florida. How many years ago was that? It was about 5 years ago, and that was actually when I had endometriosis. So I moved to Florida, found this practitioner or I found a practitioner there, and that's when I reversed my chronic disease, and that was amazing. And Florida I see it like a stepping stone to Hawaii, because it was like it allowed us to step out of like the 9 to 5 and start our own businesses. But then Hawaii was like, the end goal dream. I mean, we'll see how long we'll be here, but we just enjoy it. We enjoy it while we're here.
Yeah. And I love that. So, why don't you just tell, I guess, tell everyone how you got like into nutrition? Like, what just like, I guess, got you started in that space?
Totally. Yeah, so my background is more sports nutrition. So working with athletes, this was my college education and professional career. Just more like performance based, and just like how to fuel your body to be able to perform. And so I think that somewhat set me up to not fall into the restrictive diets, because I was just always like, okay, if you grow up in athletics and then if you end up studying this as a part of your continued education, you understand the importance of calories and macronutrients. And that was at least, I was at least on my way a little bit with that. But I mean, so far from what I've learned now, I've had to unlearn so much of even what I've learned in school.
Yeah.
So nutrition, I think my background was more, I would have said I had a decent interest in nutrition, but it was just so mainstream. It was just like, eat lean chicken breast and your salads, and like you're golden, right?
Yeah.
And just not really like a deep understanding. And it was honestly through my own health, plummeting, that I became interested in nutrition, because I just thought I was totally fine as long as I was eating enough, and I was, eating the proper balance of macronutrients, and I was weightlifting and not like, killing myself with cardio, that I was healthy. Like I just truly thought that I thought I was thriving back then. And through regressing into endometriosis, I was like, oh my gosh, you're telling me that, I think just understanding, thankfully getting plugged into the alternative route, because I was, you know, if you go the Western route, there's just this idea of like, no, like nothing you're doing is making your chronic disease exist. You know, it's like, it's nothing, you're not doing anything wrong,
Mm.
but here's what you can do, you know, medication and surgeries to help like manage your symptoms. And it just didn't sit well with me. And so thankfully getting plugged into like the alternative route, I was able to understand, okay, you know, 80% of chronic disease, it's environmental, it's from what we eat. And it was just kind of like my world started to open from there. And then honestly, like I had the information, you know, I discovered people like Dr. Ray Peat and Dr. Broda Barnes, people that educated on metabolism and thyroid health. And I was starting to learn about the nutrition from there, but there was so much that I was like, no, like that can't be true. Like that can't be true. There's no way that dairy can be helpful for me, you know, until I self-experimented. So it was a combination of like, I was becoming very interested in the information of nutrition and like how to, you know, set the body into a place of thriving health. But it was not until truly like self-experimentation, which I just like, that's the most beautiful thing in the world, for people to be able to give themselves the opportunity of like, I don't know, just kind of putting the power back into your own hand of like, you can do this, you know, like you can make small steps towards your health that that are your decisions, you know, like you don't have to listen to anybody else. I saw a post the other day. His name is Adam. He's the guy that owns the Lifeblood company. Are you familiar with them?
I'm not, no.
The Lifeblood, it's like a supplement company that's like
Okay.
a lot of like metabolic health supplements. And I saw this, he phrased it this way in this post that he made that I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. How have I not thought of it this way? But he was like, this sphere of health is not authoritarian. And like, there's no authoritarianism in this sphere of health, unlike restrictive diets out there, like keto and like these things where like there's some person telling you how to eat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this was the first world that I kind of stepped into where it was like encouraging self-experimentation, encouraging what works best for you, and like learning about my own body's physiology, and then self-experimenting to find what works best with my physiology was like the most beautiful gift that I feel like I could have given myself. And so that's kind of what sparked my huge passion for nutrition was, yes, having the information, but I mean, our own anecdotal experience is just equally as important as what's on paper. And I talk about that all the time because I'm just like, you know, the quote unquote science can say whatever it says, but like we have our own bodies to be able to experiment with. And so, yeah, that's what has sparked my passion tremendously. And that's what I'm always encouraging other people to do is like, hey, self-experiment, figure out what's right for you, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And with that, I find just like no like guilt or shame, like with other things, just like dieting, like there's just so much just like fear surrounding that. And with like, yeah, pro metabolic, it's just like there's like no fear, you know,
Exactly.
whatsoever.
Exactly. It's kind of more of a focus on informed choice, which is how everybody in this community takes that approach to everything in their lives. Like any kind of intervention or like anything that could step into their lives, they're like, okay, how do I make an informed choice about there? There's a pro and a con, right? And so kind of like, you know, if somebody was coming from like a keto diet and they started killing their metabolism, it's like you actually have total freedom to like jump to like 3,000 calories overnight if you want to, like if you want to, you know. So like somebody has the freedom to do that. Is there going to be a con maybe that comes with that? Yeah, probably. But it's like you still have the freedom to, and it's just it's kind of scary for people to feel that freedom for the first time in their lives if they've always had an authoritarian outlook on life and always answer to somebody else to tell them like how to live their lives. But I just feel like it's this like rite of passage almost into like womanhood of like, whoa, I am like I'm the homemaker of my home, you know, like you, like I get to be informed about the decisions that I make, and I get to make these decisions for myself, you know, for my family. And it's just a really beautiful concept.
Yeah, for sure. So switching over, I guess, to the metabolism, since that's what you specialize in, can you just explain like what exactly it is and just all the functions that it does?
Totally. Yeah. So the best way I usually describe this is just kind of taking what we usually think of when we think of metabolism. I mean, what was your idea of metabolism when you were like younger?
Definitely like, oh, like you see someone, they're super skinny, like, oh, they have a fast metabolism. Oh, someone that's, bigger, like, oh, their metabolism is slow. Like that's literally all I thought
That
about
was
it.
it. Yeah, that was 100% my concept as well, even until like I was probably like 23 or something. That was still my understanding because I think I saw metabolism as only describing whether or not somebody was uh, whether or not somebody was lean. Which now that I'm understanding metabolism, I'm like, you could be super lean and have an insanely sluggish metabolism because of how stress hormones are catabolic in the body. But essentially, going back
Mhm.
to the example you gave, I that was my understanding. And that was really, I think I just had this very reductionist view, this microscopic view of what metabolism was. But if you understand, like, okay, what that means, being able to take food and convert it into energy,
Mhm.
then we understand that that's affecting like every cellular process of the body. And so, yeah, metabolism is your function of the metabolism is going to dictate, like, if you even think about it with like a picture of like, okay, if you're taking food, converting it into energy, you can also see that described in like wound healing, for example. Like if you got a cut or bruise or something, like, and thinking about how long it takes for your body to heal, you can see how that's dictated by your metabolic health as well. It's basically the health of your cells, like cells, not like selves. I feel like I always mix it. Like people think I'm talking about one or the other, but cells. And so essentially, yeah, it's impacting truly every cellular process of the body. And your thyroid is what dictates the rate of your metabolism. And so it's essentially about both. It's about like optimizing the health of your thyroid, optimizing the health of your metabolism kind of go hand in hand. And depending on what the state of your metabolic health is, there's, yeah, so wound repair, your digestion, your ability, yeah, to maintain a healthy weight. But what might be healthy, what you might think is healthy, might not be what your body actually wants to be at. And especially if somebody is having to really painfully, um, like painfully strictly like keep their body at a certain weight, there's a really really good chance that their body does not want to be there, at all. And so yeah, it's affecting digestion. It's even affecting your menstrual cycle of just being able to I mean, menstrual cycles, like I had no education on that growing up. I just thought that they were supposed to be painful, they're
Yeah.
supposed to be, you're supposed to be moody, you that they were just kind of this curse on women. And now I'm like, what in the world? Like, what have we, where are we going with this? Because we're seeing, honestly, like the fact that that's so culturally accepted shows you how environmentally where we are headed as far as like how prevalent chronic issues are in the world. But menstrual cycles should be like, you should only be able to know that you're starting your period based on like a calendar or waking up one day and, oh, like I started my period. Like it shouldn't be this huge thing where you lead up to with like the moodiness and the mood swings and the breast tenderness. Like all of these are signs of estrogen dominance, not producing enough progesterone. And even if your body is producing enough progesterone, if the estrogen is too high, it's still knocking your body off of balance. And so essentially, restoring your metabolic health is taking into consideration all of the things that allow the metabolism to thrive. So not having excess estrogen, which can come in the form of many things, such as pharmaceuticals and medications, and even like polyunsaturated fatty acids and stress. It's also taking into account your mineral balance, and so making sure that your minerals are balanced can literally dictate the stress that your body carries and feels. But yeah, metabolic health and restoring metabolic health is essentially like allowing your cells to be able to thrive, and therefore your body to become as resilient as possible to the stressors around us, to our environmental stress, and to be able to thrive. So that's, once learning about that, I was just like, this describes literally everything. Because if you describe the symptoms of like a sluggish metabolism, you're essentially describing so many symptoms that people describe for all these other issues, right? And so people find that when they just restore their metabolic health alone, they're like, oh, okay, I don't have IBS anymore. Oh, I don't have depression anymore. That's interesting. Like, it just shows you that how rooted it is in your overall health. So that's my little spiel on on
Right.
metabolism.
Yeah, no, that's good. I remember like I said, like finding you like just over a year ago, and I was like, why didn't no one teach me this? Like I didn't know like anything about this. And I was like just learning about it. I was like, wait, this is so just like interesting, like how it's just in charge of like so many things, like thyroid hormones, digestion, you name it. Like it like helps it, right? Like,
Totally.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And especially to see, I mean, I just want to like emphasize that again of just like, we are so used to symptom chasing in our culture, whether you are going down like the Western route or the alternative route, because it's very easy to get wrapped up in symptom chasing and rabbit holes in the alternative medicine route. It's like, oh, the root of my issues is blank. And like just going down like this crazy acute, I guess just like rabbit hole of like trying to heal that one thing. And yet, if we restore the function and the health of our cells of our body, we can quite literally perhaps like bring our body back into balance and not even be that won't even be an issue is my point. Like someone might think, oh, food sensitivities, that is my problem. Like that is like I've just got to figure out how to heal the food sensitivities. And I'm like, well, yeah, like restoring metabolic health is how I would personally do that. So yeah, it's fascinating how much it describes your overall health.
Yeah, for sure. And also, how can you tell like if your metabolism like is trashed, like to begin with?
So the probably the most obvious signs of an under functioning or a hypo metabolic state would be, you know, losing your hair, losing the outer third of your eyebrows, the inability to fall asleep or stay asleep at night, feeling tired but wired, like you're exhausted during the day. You might have afternoon crashes, but then you have, again, a hard time falling asleep at night. PMS, low libido, even just like moodiness and mood swings, anxiousness, depression. These are all signs of a sluggish metabolism. A lot of gut issues as well. I mean, SIBO would be like another something that comes up when somebody has a sluggish metabolism is the ability for small intestinal bacteria overgrowths to even happen. So yeah, digestional issues. So not having regular bowel movements, you know, 1 to 3 times a day. Also, just using the bathroom like all the time. I remember in my which is funny, it was my leanest season of my life and my most unhealthy season of my life. I was probably using the bathroom 15 times, like 20 times a day. Like I would drink water and go to the bathroom like all the time. And just thought that was totally normal. I was just like, oh, it's probably because I'm drinking a lot of water and I'm super hydrated. No, I was like so minerally depleted and drinking like tap water. Like that wasn't helping me at all. And so, yeah, just a lot of what people describe are even just like a part of them that they always thought was normal. Like, I don't know, even just like dry skin, like, oh, I just have dry skin. We don't have to have dry skin, you know, like a lot of learning about the symptoms of a sluggish metabolism are honestly just like bringing awareness to this stuff does not have to be your normal. You don't have to be irritable and I guess like easily triggered is another way to describe it. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything else out, but like, yeah, digestional health, your hair, your skin, even having, yeah, I talked about menstrual cycle. I think that it would be pretty much covering the sluggish metabolic markers. And then essentially like the exact opposite of that would be like somebody that's having a thriving metabolic state, would be, and you'll watch this happen. Like you'll be like, oh my gosh, you're telling me these are symptoms of an underfunctioning metabolism. Okay, well, I'm going to go work on this. And then you'll watch them slowly move into balance. I forgot the most important thing. Sorry, your temps and pulses. How did I forget that? Your temps and pulses are probably like the easiest thing to like sit here and like, if you're listening, just taking your resting heart rate. And the best time to take it is in the morning, honestly. If you're like in bed, you wake up, you don't move around a lot, just take your resting pulse, and then stick a thermometer in your mouth and see where they land. So ideally you want a resting heart rate between 75 and 85 beats per minute upon waking. And then your heart rate will rise throughout the day as you eat and move around. Obviously your heart rate will rise, and then it'll slowly fall back down as you go towards the, you're winding down for the day. But your temperature is another huge thing. And even without a thermometer, you can kind of assess your temperature right now, right? Like you can feel your hands, you can feel your feet, you can feel the bridge of your nose. If those things are cold right now, while you're sitting here listening to this podcast, like you are probably in a hypometabolic state, probably. But you can be really accurate about it and take your temperature upon rising and see where it's at. Ideally, you want to be waking with a temperature of Fahrenheit of 97.8 degrees. And then that will rise as you go throughout the day as well. And especially after eating. Now the two exceptions to that are if you have a super high temperature or a super high pulse, which can indicate that you're running on stress hormones. So a lot of people, when they start healing their metabolism, they're like, oh, I'm fine. Like I have a really high pulse or a really high temperature. But then they find that it actually decreases as they start healing their metabolism. And then their thyroid takes over, and like their true body temperature, their true pulse takes over, and it starts to rise again. But if you think about it in simple terms, to just like simplify all of that, when we think about the ability to take food and convert it into energy, we need a warm body to be able to do that. It makes so much sense when you think about it that way. And so if you are a warm person and you have a warm core body temperature, it means you are actually, because heat is energy, right? So like that means you are burning calories more quickly. You're taking nutrients, you're needing more nutrients, and you're converting it into energy more quickly. And so that's really the most simple takeaway is like, okay, am I warm or am I cold? If I'm cold, I probably have a really, really slow metabolism. You think about bears that go and hibernate for the winter, they have to bring their core body temperature very, 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 very low to be able to actually sustain hibernation. And they do that because they do that in combination with storing fat on the body, right? And so you think about it like a seesaw of like, if your core body temperature goes lower, you store fat more quickly. If your core body temperature goes higher, you're burning that fat more easily. You're burning that energy more easily. And so bears come out of hibernation, they're almost in like a diabetic state. And then as they come out of hibernation, they're able to shed some of that fat as their core body temperature rises. So that's probably the best way to describe it in simple terms.
Right. Yeah. And I remember just like, I guess like a year ago when I found you, like my pulses were like between like 50 and 60. And now they're like what you said, like 75 to 85. And I'm just like,
Wow.
like, just like, yeah, it's just like night and day, just like compared to like a year ago. I'm just like, how was I okay? Like I definitely thought that I was just like healthy and like well and stuff, but now I'm like, no. Like it's
Well,
just like so different.
especially since I learned in college, in like college education, that a low resting heart rate was like indicative of like cardiovascular health, and like you're in great health if you have like a super low resting heart rate. And so a lot of endurance runners, endurance athletes have incredibly low resting heart rates, but like we have to understand how that, even if we just study the physiology of the body, we would realize our thyroid is what literally dictates like how quickly our heart is going to beat in our bodies. And running and endurance exercise is a stress. There's no other way around it. It is a stress to the body. And so the body adapts to that stress by becoming more quote unquote resilient to the stress, which just means it's burning less energy. It's like, whoa, there's a lot of stress going on. So I'm going to burn less energy to be able to sustain this stressful exercise. So burning less energy, all that means is you are burning less calories and energy. So the heart rate slows down to be able to do that. So whenever, just like that concept alone, people are like, okay, that's why I lost weight when I started that running program. And then I started gaining weight like down the road, and that didn't even make any sense. So then I was like, what do? I need to cut calories more. And like, it just becomes really, a really vicious cycle from there of just like, how do I cut? Because it doesn't work after a while. If your goals are weight loss, and especially like the stress cortisol usually stores as belly fat too. So people usually like, they lose weight and then they're like, why is my belly in particular storing like a unique amount of belly fat, like just right there? That's what a lot of like endurance athletes usually deal with. And so, yeah, just that concept alone of just understanding heart rate, how we used to think that it just meant health overall. But like, I mean, I think about every single endurance athlete friend that I had growing up was sick all of the time, like always sick, always sick, always sick. Like probably every month they got a cold or some sort of something just knocked them out because their immune system was truly under functioning that much because their metabolism has to slow down to be able to keep up with the stress on their body. So, you know, and maybe men are more resilient. I'm not opposed to, you know, that question of just like, can men sustain, you know, marathons, you know, better than women? I would actually agree. Like women being the life bringers of this world, like I would think need less stress on their bodies in order to thrive, basically.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that takes us into our next question. What are just some signs that your body may be running off of stress hormones?
That's a great question. This is another one where people are just like a little bit shell shocked whenever they bring an awareness to this in their bodies, because number one, I talk about this a lot, but I just think that our culture really perpetuates and enables a stress hormone addiction, which is just like this inability to turn off. Basically, you're like plugged in to your phone. You can't put down your phone. There is a spectrum, obviously. Like I may be talking in extremes, and people might be like, "That's not me." But I'll share from my own experience. Back when I was very much on like this stress hormone train, I could not take a day off from the gym. I don't care if it was even just a 20-minute workout. I thought that I needed a workout every single day. Just besides like, and if you asked me back then, I'd be like, oh, it's because I love working out. Like, hello, like I want to go to the gym and I want to work out. But looking back to it, like I had an actual addiction to it where I was like anxious if I did not get to work out that day. I revolved my whole day around it of like when I would get to work out in the day, because I it's almost like you get this high off of it. I feel better afterwards. I'm more energized afterwards. And I realized like it is like the hormones that are produced during that workout that I was like addicted to, and I needed it just to be able to just be able to sustain my energy throughout the day. So I would say like addiction to exercise, which is, like I said, I may be talking in extremes, but this is absolutely like perpetuated in our culture, like team no days off, you know, like just this idea of like always having to do something, not being able to just like sit and be present and rest. I know with moms, I think some of the major things is just like not being able to just like sit on the floor with your kids and like be present with them, like sitting on the floor with them and being like, where's my phone? I need to check my phone and be kind of like multitasking in order to feel safe. Like, I think literally like being able to divorce yourself from the stress hormone addiction is actually being able to not multitask. Like I know women are great at multitasking. People say that all the time. Women are great at multitasking. I'm like, you know what? Something I've learned over time is actually not to multitask. Like I don't need to be doing 7 things at once. Like I am practicing being present with one thing at a time and then coming to another thing. And so I think, yeah, not having to multitask at all times, not having to continuously check your phone, not being addicted to exercise, not being irritable, not being kind of like addicted to drama, which again sounds like an extreme, but we've all had the friend that like, you know, we're telling a story or something and they're like, drop everything. I want to hear everything that's going on. Like, tell me the good stuff. Tell me the good stuff. Like it's this idea of like needing drama as like a source of like literally like almost what you I mean, again, like the sense of like you almost get like a high from it because it stimulates you in a certain way with like adrenaline and cortisol to be able to like be in your safe zone. And I mean, I talked about this example like I think like a week ago. I did a live with Samantha Naturally, and I was talking about this idea of how back in my stress hormone like time, I was actually super into true crime podcasts, like
Mm.
super into them. And even just the idea of being like home alone and like listening to true crime was like, I loved it. Like I was super entertained by it. And then as I came out of the stress hormone like season of my life, I was like, why was I doing that? Like I was literally like making myself insane. And like, I don't even know. It's like my body wanted to be in that adrenaline state at all times.
Mm.
So those are just some ideas of like what the addiction to stress hormones looks like on a lower scale, you know, needing coffee to get through your day, needing coffee to like upregulate you during the day, and then maybe something to downregulate you at night. I know a lot of people turn to alcohol and other things to be able to downregulate. But just like the idea of just being very like irritable, I think is like one of the main indicators of being on stress hormones.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely like a lot there for sure. And like, yeah, I feel like, yeah, just like the adrenaline, like wanting to know, like, I guess just like even with your phone, yeah, just being addicted to that because that just really stimulates, I guess, like the dopamine hit, right? And just like cortisol, just be like, okay, because there's just so much information like on our phones and like news and stuff that we weren't meant to all really like take in and just really like gets us going and like upregulates us to like find like the next thing, okay, like what else is going on and whatnot in the world, which is just insane that we're like doing that now and just so addicted.
And I mean, it's funny. I like it's funny to see this on social media as well. Like I'll get messages every now and then that are like, I don't have time to go through your page. Just send me the post on this. And I'm like, honestly, like I think the most healing thing you can do for yourself
Yeah.
is actually to explore my page. Take the
Yeah.
time to like self explore and like tell yourself you can do it. You don't need the quick fix. Somebody serves you answer right now. Like I think one of the most important things in the healing process, which is why I don't even answer those questions because I'm like, I'm going to let them find the information on their own as like a tool that I'm giving. In my mind, I'm like, trust me, like I would be doing you a disservice if I went and like found this for you. I'm not a librarian. Like
Yeah.
it is going to be so healing for you to be able to find this on your own, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So with that, what are some things that you can do to like help support your metabolism and just like reduce like the cortisol and like the stress hormones?
Yeah. So I think one of the most overlooked things ever is just being able to wake up and eat breakfast. We don't run on thin air. We've been fasting all night. There's no reason to fast any longer, especially if we have things to do in the morning, like
Mhm.
work or chase kids around if you're a mom or work out. I think that one of the most detrimental things that came our way is the fat is fuel culture with the bulletproof coffee and the intermittent fasting and the keto and like that whole culture of like it was almost like people feel productive and in control and like they're doing it right if they're able to, it's almost like wearing it as a badge of honor, you know, of like, oh, I don't eat breakfast. Like I'm above that. I don't eat breakfast. Like I can fast until like this period of time. Trust me, like it is nothing to feel like you need to do to either prove to yourself or prove to others. Like you need fuel. And even just waking up and within 30 minutes is usually my first tip that I give somebody is just like wake up and eat breakfast. Like wake up and eat a balanced breakfast of protein, carbs, and fats. Don't just wake up and eat cereal and that's all that you eat. You're going to be going back and getting more food in like 30 minutes. It's just going to run right through you. You need protein to be able to balance that out. But just if you wake up and you are eating breakfast, you are pretty much setting yourself up, your metabolism up for the day, but you're setting yourself up to be able to regularly nourish yourself for the rest of the day. And I know this because people will reach out to me that are kind of in a more disordered eating type, because a lot of people that do struggle with disordered eating do fall into these extreme diets such as intermittent fasting. And so they'll try to eat breakfast because they'll be like, oh dang, am I like ruining my hormones? Okay, like I'm gonna go try to eat breakfast. And then when they do, they find themselves hungry and they're like, I feel very out of control because I am so hungry throughout the rest of the day when I do eat breakfast. I would rather suppress it and then know that I can only eat this much at night. And so there's a lot to explore when you start to step away from these things. Like it might not just be food principles. It might be, whoa, why do I feel this way about food? Why do I feel this need to control my food? What are these thoughts coming from? A lot of people have to do this like emotional and mental unpacking on why they have the relationship they do with food whenever they start to incorporate simple food steps like this. So, but the most important thing that I think you could start with is just eating breakfast. And if you drink coffee, doing it after breakfast, never on an empty stomach, and just making sure that you're eating enough and then a balanced, macronutrient plate. Macronutrients are just protein, fats, and carbs. And so understanding that you need protein and carbs together to be able to deliver glucose where it needs to go. And then fats have their own purpose in that plate, and seeing a nice balanced plate, maybe it could be every 2 to 4 hours in the beginning, and then maybe you could stretch it to every 3 to 4 hours after you've been doing this for a while. But yeah, waking up, eating breakfast within 30 minutes, and then eating regularly after that throughout the day is one of the most important things you can do for your metabolism. And then the other really simple thing that I tell people is just honestly, just like getting reconnected to nature and observing nature as a tool to understanding like how we are meant to eat. I think that it can be really confusing to be in the diet culture world because it is literally meant to confuse us. And we're so confused on this study and this study and this study and this study, and like so wrapped up in the imperial evidence and like the did I say imperial? I don't know if it's empirical or imperial. I think it's empirical. Empirical?
I'm not sure.
Okay, don't worry about that. People are wrapped up in like the academia, I guess. And yeah. I'm like, I really feel like we are really disconnected to nature. Why don't you guys just like step out, reconnect to nature, and observe what's around you? And so like with metabolism suppressing foods, what can we use as like a tool to understand that? Okay, we can look at the animals that hibernate for the winter. So obviously just watching them, like seeing what kind of foods they eat to slow down their metabolisms are a really good tool to understand, okay, maybe that's slowing down my metabolism, and like maybe I should make that the bulk of what I eat, such as, nuts and seeds being like one of the most obvious examples. And then just understanding like, okay, when we move into summertime and there's abundance of fruits around us and raw honey, could it be that these foods also help us get into a place of a thriving metabolism because it's summertime, food is abundant, we can use our ancestors to see that. So I think just reconnecting to nature and understanding, what kind of foods are appropriately fueling our metabolism or suppressing them is going to be like such a sustainable skill that people can acquire.
Yeah, I completely agree with that for sure. There's like, especially I feel like just eating breakfast within, I think, I saw it from you, just eating it within like 30 minutes will just like help your body just not go on this like cortisol, just like roller coaster. And especially like if you're a coffee drinker, yes, drinking it after drinking it. I've heard you could also like drink it like with like your meal as well, just so that you're getting like that fuel in as well. But yeah, especially I think just coming from like a paleo background with everything was just like nuts and seeds and just like almond flour, like almond milk, cashew butter, like you name it, it's like made into it because like you're dairy free or whatever, you're like grain free. And so, but yeah, just seeing that like as bears, like how like they hibernate and they, eat all these things that slow their metabolism. So then like obviously it's going to slow ours too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Could you just explain the importance of minerals like magnesium, zinc, iodine, sodium, calcium, and why our bodies need them? Because I feel like this is definitely talked about like in the metabolic space, but I feel like it's not really in like the nutrition world too much. So could you just unpack that?
It really isn't. I think that, the benefits of minerals somewhat are talked about. Like I remember taking nutrition classes in college where, I don't know, they were talked about really just straightforward, but not as a result of like, it's okay. I would equate it to the same as someone saying that like kale is healthy. I'm like, well, what does that even mean? Like, does it mean that it has nutrients, but like, how is that actually impacting our physiology? That's exactly how I learned about minerals in college, is like, here's like what they have inside of them, but like never a description on like how they actually impact our body's physiology. And I think that if enough diet camps, quote unquote, like diet culture camps, understood the importance of minerals, like there really would not be a whole lot of this versus this versus this. Like if we just understood minerals alone, I think a lot of us would eat pretty similarly, because we would understand like how these work in the body and what these impact whenever we are deficient. But essentially, I think the most important thing that your listeners could understand about minerals is that they're all on this wheel with each other. So like you can't just take a zinc supplement and straightforward just take a zinc supplement and think that you're just getting this benefit of zinc, which is, I know, like sounds astronomical to say because everyone is taking zinc right now to like boost their immune system. But like taking zinc, taking an isolated mineral, because it has a relationship with other minerals in the body. If you think about it, like I gave this example in this interview one time, and I think it's like one of the most simple examples to think of. But if you take like an orange and think like, okay, this is an orange that's like full of like vitamin C, and because nutrients and minerals play with each other as well. Everything has a relationship. That's essentially like the point, is like everything has such a like a whole body picture relationship. And if you take an orange and think like, okay, this is a great form of vitamin C, but it's not just the vitamin C, it's everything that is built around and within that orange that helps the vitamin C be delivered where it's supposed to go. And so we see like a vitamin C supplement, which is really just mostly absorbic acid, like that's most vitamin C supplements. And we're just going to take this absorbic acid and think that I'm getting like a vitamin C benefit. But if we take absorbic acid, which is just like the shell, if you look at like a diagram of what vitamin C is, it's like the outer shell of the vitamin C. If we take that, we have to understand that if we're not taking the cofactors with it, then we are actually stripping we're taking from our own reserves to be able to meet what we're giving our body for that vitamin C to be able to be utilized. And so what happens whenever you take absorbic acid is it actually takes copper from your own reserves, which is a mineral. And it's coming from your own reserves as opposed to like something that you eat. And so whenever we look at food, we can understand that you can't really just isolate a mineral and take a mineral. There's like all these cofactors that it's playing in a relationship with, and they're all equally important, or you are taking from your own reserve. And so like, that's like the most simple way that I could describe it. And so when taking the topic of minerals, which by the way, on our own podcast, we have like a minerals 101. It's a free resource. If any of your listeners are interested in like hearing about every single mineral and like what the benefits are. But I think the even more important to that is just this idea of like, we can't just take isolated minerals. And so when we look at some of the most metabolically supportive foods out there, such as liver, beef liver is just like amazing. It is offering our bodies the appropriate amount of minerals so our body can utilize those minerals best. And so that concept alone was like mind-blowing to me, because I just thought, oh, I can get all my minerals from seeds or like plants or just like a supplement whenever I need it. And that's like just really not true. We have to look at the most minerally rich foods out there that are bioavailable, but also like are in appropriate quantities to each other that our bodies can actually use. And that's like this amazing way that we can learn what our bodies need to thrive. And so I know that didn't really answer your question, but I just think that is like the more important takeaway. If I could give like any takeaway, is like step away from the mindset of taking an isolated mineral. If you're depleted in something, like if you feel like you're depleted in copper or something, like you can't just go take a copper supplement, go take a whole food source copper supplement and be able to best absorb and utilize that copper, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, for sure that does. Yeah, I remember learning about like ascorbic acid and I was like, wait, this isn't even like the whole food source. Like it's just like one part of it. I was like, what's like the good in that, you know? So I think, yeah, just eating, like obviously eat the whole orange because you're not isolating it. You're eating the whole thing to like get all of its benefits, especially.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So what is something that you do to live nourished?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that the most important thing that I started doing for myself as I started learning more about metabolic health was flipping my mindset. I think for me, it's about mindset and like flipping a mindset to like from depletion to what can I do to pour back into my body? Because I would say me like 3 or 4 years ago, if I think I saw, I mean, no, I would say like 5 years ago, but I saw food as something to burn off. Like I ate this, so I need to go burn it off. Like very much a rewards based system, rewards and punishments, where it's like everything I saw is like this exchange where it's like, if I eat this, I got to go get rid of it. And deplete my body, just always worrying about like burning things off, as opposed to right now, I don't even like recognize that mindset anymore. Like now that I realize how stressful our world is and our environment is, and just like everything around us, I'm like, we more than any other time in the world, like need to be pouring back into our bodies, and like that being what sets us up for the day. So I think how I live nourished is just like flipping my mindset from depletion to like, how do I pour into my body so it can become its most vital and resilient self? So yeah, the mindset I just think is everything.
Yeah, I like agree with that so much, because I feel like definitely I feel like in high school I was like that. I was like, oh, I gotta, like when you eat like a donut or whatever, they're like, oh well, I gotta burn this off at like my next like workout or whatever. But it's just like, yeah, now it's just like really just nourishing yourself and just, yeah, just feeling just fueling yourself properly, so that you're not in that just like state of like, I guess, scarcity like mindset. Like, I know I need to do
Yes.
this and then reward myself in like some way, but it's just like, no, let's just chill and like relax. But yeah, I
And
think that's just really important.
I just think it pours into all areas of life. If you have like a deprivation mindset,
Mm.
it is going to pour into everything. You'll see everything as I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that. Like everything is deprivation and scarcity, as opposed to like, I can do this. I'm gonna pour it. Like it's essentially like speaking positivity over your body, as opposed to like negativity. And it's just, our minds are just so powerful. So it completely changed my life, and I can't emphasize it enough.
For sure. So where can everyone find you and connect with you?
So Instagram is obviously a free resource. My podcast is free resource. My Instagram is Kori Meloy, which is KoriMeloy, and then my podcast is called The Freely Rooted Podcast. It's myself and my co-host Fallon Lee on there, and we love doing it. We start up season 3 in 2 weeks, I think.
Mhm.
And those are probably the best ways to like find information that I put out there. I have a free guide as well that you can find through my Instagram, and then just contact me through email if you ever need to reach me. But if you just like dig through my Instagram and podcast, you will probably find the answers that you're looking for if you're like brand new to this topic.
For sure. Yeah, you got so many good graphics just like explained in there. And yeah, the podcast I just find it super helpful, just especially like with the guests that you bring on too, just like so many different people's like stories and like their experiences. Like it's just like been like really helpful.
Totally. We love it so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Kori. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you for having me on.